Okay, today I was just going to do a quick review of what a limited cost trader is. We've had quite a lot of clients asking us, does it apply to me? What are the rules? What are relevant goods? And what actually is a limited cost trader? So the first thing is the new rules applied from April 17. So it's relatively old now, but it's so important that people are aware of what the rules are and if they should be applying them. Or if it's affecting them. So basically HMRC brought out a new flat rate percentage for VAT at 16.5%, and they're basically saying that if you come under the rules of the definitions of a limited cost trader, then effectively you've got to apply to your gross turnover, which includes the VAT, 16.5% to work out what your liability is for that particular period. So there's two things really that people need to know is what are relevant goods and what do you need to apply to work out whether you fall under the 16.5% band or under the normal band for your sector. To see if you're a limited cost trader, you've got to look at what your purchases are on relevant goods. And if those purchases are less than 2% of your gross turnover, including your VAT, then you will be deemed to be a limited cost trader. The other definition is if your purchases on relevant goods are more than 2%, but less than £1,000 per annum, then you are still deemed to be a low cost trader. So there's those two rules are going on. So what you're effectively doing is you're saying, what am I buying on relevant goods? And the definition, I'll come to that in a minute in terms of what relevant goods are. As I buy my relevant goods, if they're 2% of my gross turnover, then I've got to apply the 16.5% because I'm going to be deemed to be a limited cost trader. So relevant goods, that's where you've got to now look at what are they and what am I buying in terms of relevant goods. So some examples of relevant goods we've written down here. So stationery, office supplies, gas, electricity used exclusively in the business, things like fuel for a taxi firm. So if you're a taxi company, the fuel is allowable. Stock for any shop. If you're buying and selling goods, then and your main source of business activity is selling, then you can obviously apply the stock that you're buying in. Cleaning products exclusively used for the business, that's deemed to be a relevant good. Another example that we've used, hair products for hairdressers, they would be relevant goods. Standard software provided on a disc, so if it's provided on a disc, then that is deemed to be relevant goods. Food for customers is also based on what the revenue are telling us at the moment. And goods provided by subcontractors, which are itemised separately. So those are just a few examples. That's not an exhaustive list, but it gives you just a rough idea of some of the examples. And then what aren't relevant goods, so this is probably more important because people are saying, well, can I include this, can I include that? And this is a list that we've drawn up, and again it's not exhaustive, but it is a list. So these aren't relevant goods. So we've got any capital expenditure, food and drink for consumption by the flat rate business or employees, accounting fees, advertising costs. You've got vehicle parts and fuel. So obviously, if it's a taxi firm, then they effectively become relevant goods, but for a normal business, they're not relevant goods. Any type of electronic downloaded service isn't a relevant good. Any downloaded software, office rental costs, and any services. So that's the big one. Any services aren't deemed to be relevant goods. The other main one that we always mention to people, because people were starting to think that they could bypass the rules, is if your main source of business activity isn't buying and selling, then the revenue are basically saying goods for resale are not relevant goods. So if you're a consultant and then you set up an eBay shop and start buying and selling a few goods to effectively try and mitigate these rules, because you're then saying, well, my relevant goods are 2% because I'm buying goods and selling them, that doesn't work. You effectively, because your main business activity isn't buying and selling goods, it's consultancy, then those purchases for goods that you're selling then, perhaps on an eBay site or, you know, to customers, that's not your main activity. So effectively, that's not a relevant good. So that doesn't work if you're thinking, you know, I'll set up a little shop and buy goods in. It just doesn't work. The other thing, one last thing that I just wanted to point out was, if you're looking at your flat rate scheme over a period, people think, well, okay, I'm 16.5%, so that's it, I'm 16.5%. But you are allowed to look at every period individually, which you're supposed to do. So you effectively say, my standard rate at 14% would still apply. But then you look at your period that you're doing, so the quarter that you're working on, to see whether you are deemed to be a limited cost trader. So you may have, but some businesses are close to the 2%, legitimately close to the 2%. So they effectively would need to check every quarter what the calculations are. If the relevant good expenditure is over 2% and you're ticking all the other boxes, then effectively you can use your lower rate. So that's really important. People think that, you know, as soon as you sort of hit the 16.5% low cost trader rules for one quarter, that means that you're a low cost trader for all quarters, and that isn't the case. You know, you can effectively apply the calculations every quarter, which is what we do for our clients, to make 100% sure that you have to use the 16.5%. Now, for some businesses, some consultancy businesses, that will be the case. You know, they're going to be 16.5% ongoing, but you know, you've got some businesses that are genuinely close to the 2% level, and you know, they potentially can drop in and out of the 16.5% band back down into the lower rate if that quarter is applicable. So it's all about doing the calculations. So hopefully that's helped. Any help needed, just please call the office and we can help you with anything. Okay, thanks, bye.